Hi, my name is Becky Munzenberger, and this is my testimony of how God saved my life and healed my body when I was 19 years old. Now, I want to start off by saying that before I had my healing encounter with God, I had no understanding that God was real. So I was regular attender of church growing up. My family went pretty much every week. We were involved in Sunday school, choirs, annual plays. But for myself, I never understood that God was actually real or even had an idea that that was the case. For me, church and God was really very much a religion. And so what that looked like was me reading scripture, going to church, but I was basically just singing songs about someone who lived a long time ago and wasn't alive today. I also want to share, before I get into more details of my story, that for context, that growing up, I was good at a lot of different things. So God has gifted me in different ways. And I also have been gifted in a way of wanting to pursue excellence in things. Now, that's something I've learned over time, but growing up, it was really an unhealthy perfectionism. So while I would maybe do well at something, I would keep pushing it in an unhealthy way a lot of times to this point where it has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, then, it's not good enough. And that ended up translating into a lot of areas of my life. So whether that be, with my academics, with the music programs I was part of, sports, which I was also involved in, I really started to take on this mentality that if I wasn't the best, then I wasn't perfect. And so therefore I wasn't good. And, my parents never taught me this. I would say most of my teachers never taught me this. And it was just something that I took on over time that, if I wasn't number one, if, I wasn't doing the best, that I didn't have value. And so I spent a lot of high school really searching, to find that constant happiness. Because when you're in that state of perfectionism, you're constantly, having up and downs based off of your performance. So to also tie into that, when I was 17, while I'm also going through all these, perfectionism and insecurity issues, I ended up getting sexually assaulted. Now, I grew up very sheltered to sex, to pretty much everything in that realm. And so when it happened, I really didn't know what to do. There was just this wave of emotions that came over me, obviously pain, shock, unfamiliarity with what really happened. And because of that, I just kept it internal. I really didn't know how to process the emotions and the pain that I was going through. And honestly, I kind of thought if I don't talk about it, if I don't think about it anymore, it's just going to go away. So between this perfectionism, the insecurities I was already dealing with, and then now the sexual assault, I really started to question myself. Starting to say things like, what's wrong with you? Why are you not perfect? And this carried on then into college. So fast forward then freshman year of college, started to do the whole party scene, drugs, alcohol, all of that. And again, here I am trying to be happy and trying to find this in various ways. And again, finding myself in unhealthy relationships, unhealthy hookups, getting sexually assaulted again. And, it was this time of extreme sadness. I didn't understand that God obviously is the one who is going to provide our ultimate happiness. And so I just kept looking for it. And, time after time getting hurt. And, things kind of escalated to the time of spring of my freshman year, where I ended up getting hurt at a frat house, with a lot of it being my fault. And it was a huge wake-up call for me. I just kind of sat there and was really ashamed of myself and in shock and just really angry, just saying, Becky, what has happened to your life? Why are you acting the way you are? This is not you. You need to fix your life. So that's what I sought out to do. And so basically what ended up being a healthy pursuit of getting back in shape, I think I gained probably like 10 pounds just from all the drinking and, eating that you're doing when you party. And what ended up happening was it ended up becoming an unhealthy outlet for myself. So, I just wasn't dealing with, the emotional pain I had gone through relationship problems, the insecurities I was dealing with. And so basically working out became this really unhealthy outlet for me to basically run away from what I was feeling. So pretty much, I ended up through it all getting an eating disorder. And by that fall, I had lost 45 pounds. And, for me, that was not healthy at all. Like I said earlier, probably needed to lose about 10 pounds. And so at my lowest, I was 85 pounds. I'm sharing a picture here for you guys to see. I was about 10 pounds lighter than that in that picture, than what you see in that picture. And like I said, it was basically this drug of, I would experience another pain, I would experience another heartache, and I just would motivate me to run more. And just this mindset of, when I'm this way, I'm going to be happy. All my problems are going to go away. And, I ended up then, it was in November of my sophomore year when I was getting a 4.0, I was taking 18 credits, double majoring, had a solo at my concert coming up. And I remember finishing the day and I came back and I looked at myself in the mirror and all I remember was seeing this like empty shell. I think it was the first time I really actually saw myself after everything had happened so far. And I just remember, instead of feeling happy like most people would at that type of moment, all I felt was this void. I'll never forget it. It was just like literally feeling like a skeleton. And so anyways, moving forward then, so basically at my worst, I was probably eating 400 calories or less a day if I was eating anything. And at that time, running a minimum of like 12 miles a day, just extreme working out, awfulness. And after a while, your body can't handle that anymore. So my body started compensating and started binge eating because it's just trying to get healthy and trying to get back to where it's supposed to be. So then my body basically entered into this cycle and I lost control. So this thing, the running and the eating, which I was using as a way to cope with what I was going through, I was losing that. And so basically the next few months was just this awful stream of immense depression, ups and downs. My body was in severe pain. I was starting to have heart problems from all the erratic eating that I was having. My feet, I was starting to have pain in my feet from all of the constant running and no breaks. And I ended up getting really, really depressed. And so by the spring of my sophomore year, it was actually on St. Patrick's Day of all days, I was at my absolute lowest. I basically was in my room, in my dorm room, and I had another binge eating episode, and my body was in such huge pain, and I sat there for about 3 hours with a bottle of ibuprofen in my hand and basically just kept looking at it and then putting it away and kept looking at it of planning to take the whole thing and just be done. And just awfulness. And after those few hours, I ended up calling my sister who was on campus. And I just told her that, I thought about committing suicide and that I shouldn't be left alone. So I went over to her dorm so she could, watch me and all of that. And I ended up going up to her dorm room again after having another binge episode of eating. And, I got into her room and I'll never forget it. I just was in her room and all of a sudden I just started yelling at myself. I was just like, what has happened to you? Who have you become, Becky? Like, why have you lost yourself? You don't know how to eat anymore. You are obsessed with what you look like. Where's this girl? Where's Becky? Where is this creative girl, this singer, this person who loves sports? Like, where has she gone? And, I just broke, I was like, what has happened to me? And then all of a sudden, and I'll never forget it, while in the middle of this shame session, if you want to call it, all of a sudden there was like this wind that came in the room. Now there was no windows open, nothing like that. And I had no context for it at the time, but it was God's presence. And his presence just came and it just flew through the room at me. And I got knocked to my feet and I will never forget. I just was on the ground and all of a sudden I felt all the weight that I had felt over the past few years of all the pain, all the heartache. And all of a sudden I just felt it melt off my body. I don't really know how to describe it, but it was just like this weight had fallen off of me. And I felt freedom for the first time in my life in a way that I've never felt it before. I felt love in an unprecedented way. And in the midst of all of that pain that I was feeling and releasing, I felt like there was hope. For the first time in like 2 years, I felt hope. And I will literally never forget it. And I just basically sat there with his presence just renewing over me. And he broke off the anorexia. He broke off the depression. He broke off the anxiety. And as he was doing this, it was just, I just remember myself saying, I'm so sorry, God. I am so, so sorry. And then there was just, in his response was just these waves of grace and mercy. And so, this went on for a few minutes. And, after it ended, I sat there and I was like, okay, God, if you're real, I want someone to come in and play with my hair. Then I'll know somebody's real. So anyways, it was within a few minutes, my sister came in the room and that's the first thing she did. She sat down and played with my hair and I just sat up and I just looked at my sister and I was like, Katie, God's real. God just saved my life. And she's like, yeah, he's real. And, she had been praying for me for years, and I wanted nothing to do with her and her stupid Jesus friends back in the day. And so so anyways, so that day I received my healing from the anorexia, from the depression, the anxiety, healing from the sexual assault that I had when I was 17. And that next season, the next few months was just me walking out that healing. I ended up going back to my dorm room. I threw out my scale. I ended up throwing away my shot glasses. I had a fake ID at the time. Went with my sister and threw it in the lake. Got rid of, all the alcohol I had. And it was just, the next season was just such a blessing. My sister was part of InterVarsity Fellowship, which is a Christian organization on campuses. And, between my sister and that organization, they really helped me put my life back together. So the next few months was, obviously my body ended up getting healed and ended up coming back to a normal weight. But I would say some of the most impactful moments of what God did for me was that he put joy back in my life. I remember I was at just a get together and we were playing soccer, and I went home and I cried because I was just like, I had forgotten how to have fun. I literally, through, the obsession with the calories and the food and the eating, I literally just had forgotten like what life is about. And I just sat there and I just realized how God was putting joy back in my life. I had the same thing happen first time I just sat at the piano and just played for myself again. I'd forgotten how much happiness that gives me. It's just such a beautiful thing. And so, like I said, basically over these next few months in the year was, outside of him restoring my body, he gave me eyes and, a heart for people who have dealt with things like I have. And so, I'm happy to share, that happened, almost 10 years ago. And I've never dealt with an eating issue since then. And I've actually been able to help multiple women and men actually, work through and find healing from eating disorders and sexual assault as well. And so, if I could share anything with you today, it would just to be that God is so good. He is so for you, and he is like after the brokenness in our lives. He wants to redeem it, and he is after you for all your uniqueness, and he wants nothing more just to put his love on you and restore you if that's what you're in need of. So I just want to encourage you that I promise that God is real. I was one of the biggest cynics, and I didn't believe it till I experienced it. So I'm just here to tell you that God is real, that God is so good, and he can fix anything. He can literally restore anything because that's who he is. Thank you guys so much. Be blessed.